Chapter 23. The Crisis.
The obsidian plateau stretched before us like an arena carved from volcanic dreams and geological patience. Wind scoured the stone surface smooth. It carried the scent of ozone and approaching violence. My newly enhanced senses recoiled from the information overload. Each breath brought data my consciousness struggled to process. Atmospheric pressure shifted in patterns that predicted storm intensity. Trace minerals in the air hinted at dimensional boundaries growing thin. Electromagnetic fields registered against my skin like phantom touch. The apple's power continued flooding through my cellular structures. They adjusted to accommodate energies beyond their designed limitations. My wounds had closed completely. Scars that should have taken weeks to form now raised testimony to suffering inflicted mere days ago. But it was the perception that changed most dramatically. Reality revealed layers invisible to mortal eyes. Dimensions folded around existence like pages in a book written by an intelligence older than human consciousness. Kaelan moved among his pack with military precision. Centuries spent perfecting the art of coordinated violence. His massive frame cut through wind that should have staggered lesser beings. Divine power radiated from his armor. The armor seemed to drink the ambient starlight and transform it into something darker, more predatory. Each step carried authority refined across 400 years of command decisions that had reshaped continents.
Grimjaw, take the left flank.
His voice carried across the wind-scoured stone with unnatural clarity.
Use the thermal vents for cover. Their electrical discharge will ground through the superheated gases before reaching your position.
The pack leader's amber eyes tracked the terrain with a predator's focus. Steam rose from fissures where volcanic heat met storm-cooled air. The vapor created curtains that would obscure visual targeting while providing paths through the elemental fury. She moved toward the designated position with fluid grace. Her massive frame moved with impossible speed. 3 subordinates flowed into supporting formation without requiring verbal instruction.
Ironback, anchor the center.
Kaelan's gaze shifted to the pack's largest member, a lycanthrope whose scarred hide testified to centuries of serving as a living bulwark against overwhelming force.
Let them break against your position. Channel their fury toward the flanks where mobility can exploit their lack of coordination.
The massive warrior planted himself before the plateau's narrowest approach. His frame blocked the passage that the elemental armies would need to traverse. Claws extended with a metallic screech as bone structure reinforced itself through biological processes beyond normal physiology. He was preparing to withstand impacts that would pulverize normal beings.
Swiftclaw, harass their flanks.
The youngest pack member received his orders with eager anticipation barely contained beneath professional discipline.
Keep them scattered. Never commit fully. Strike weak points, withdraw before they can mount a coordinated response. Repeat until their formations collapse into exploitable chaos.
The pack responded with fluid grace. These were bonds forged through lifetimes of shared violence. Trust earned through impossible odds survived together across worlds where divine authority maintained control through systematic application of overwhelming force. Each lycanthrope knew their role without question. Centuries of tactical refinement allowed complex strategies to be communicated through minimal instruction. I watched them settle into defensive positions. Their amber eyes gleamed with predatory intelligence honed through geological ages. The coordination went beyond training. This was pack consciousness operating as a unified organism. Each member understood their function within a larger tactical framework that maximized collective survival. Beyond the crackling lightning wall, Theron's forces gathered like storm clouds given hunger and malice. Elementals of pure electrical fury writhed in chaotic masses that hurt to perceive even through the enhanced vision the apple had granted. Their forms shifted between states that violated physics. Solid electricity one moment, living lightning the next. Manifestations of tempest wrath barely contained by divine will that strained to maintain control. Lightning sprites danced through their ranks like malevolent fireflies. Each spark carried consciousness that craved destruction with single-minded determination. thunder beings rumbled with voices that shook the obsidian foundations. Their bulk was composed of compressed atmospheric pressure given form and purpose. No formation, no discipline. Only raw, elemental wrath barely leashed by a creator whose ambitions transcended immediate violence. But their numbers were staggering. Thousands of beings that had never known mortal limitation or cosmic bureaucracy's careful constraints. Each one capable of ending lives with casual efficiency. Against such forces, even Kaelan's tactical genius and the pack's centuries of coordination seemed pathetically inadequate. "Are you certain about this?" The question escaped before I could stop it, my new voice carrying across the plateau with force that made volcanic stone ring in sympathetic response. "They outnumber us by orders of magnitude. Even with the apple's power, even with divine fury applied with surgical precision, the mathematics don't favor our survival." Kaelan's amber eyes found mine across the wind-scoured stone. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite resignation, but acceptance.
Certainty is a luxury afforded to those who choose their battles according to favorable odds,
He replied. His voice carried the weight of 4 centuries spent fighting conflicts where survival seemed statistically impossible.
We fight because the alternatives to fighting represent outcomes worse than death itself.
His scarred hand gestured toward the lightning wall pulsing with malevolent energy.
Theron seeks to reshape cosmic order through force that treats individual consciousness as ammunition. The Seraph maintain hierarchies through systematic consumption of awareness. Between those options, extinction while resisting both seems almost appealing by comparison.
The words carried implications beyond the immediate tactical situation. Recognition that some conflicts required engagement regardless of outcome probability. That meaning could be found in defiance itself, even when defiance accomplished nothing except demonstrating that some beings refused to surrender while consciousness remained capable of resistance. Kaelan's final words rang across the plateau like a declaration. Observers whose attention spanned dimensions beyond mortal perception would record them.
We have faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious through coordination. Today we fight not just for survival, but for freedom itself. For the right to exist beyond hierarchies that reduce consciousness to renewable resource. Let them know what it means to challenge the pack.
The apple's warmth pulsed against my palm, where residual golden juice still glistened on skin marked by fresh scars. Knowledge continued flooding my consciousness in waves that threatened to overwhelm cognition, designed for processing terrestrial information. I could perceive things now that should have remained invisible. Dimensional boundaries where reality grew thin. Energy patterns of forces gathering beyond normal spacetime. The terrible mathematics governing divine existence, and something else. Something that made my newly enhanced perception recoil with instinctive dread. The Watchers materialized at perception's edge like nightmares crossing the threshold between dream and waking reality. Seraph observers hung suspended between dimensions. Their impossible geometries defied comprehension even through vision operating beyond 3-dimensional limitations. They existed partially in spaces adjacent to normal reality. They manifested just enough presence for observation without full materialization that would cause catastrophic failure in local physics. Hundreds of eyes reflected infinite wisdom and terrible judgment. Each one tracked developments with focus. Individual attention from consciousness vastly exceeding mortal capability. Manifold limbs extended through spaces that folded reality like origami. Their movements created ripples that propagated across dimensions in patterns my enhanced perception could detect but not interpret. They perched at the boundaries of existence itself. They recorded every detail with clinical detachment. Cosmic bureaucracy functioning beyond moral consideration. Not hostile exactly. Observation didn't require malice to be terrifying when conducted by beings whose attention could reshape reality through simple act of focused contemplation. "They're watching," I whispered. The words emerged as barely audible sound despite enhanced vocal capacity that should have projected clearly. Fear made my throat tight. Ancient instinct recognized predators that operated at scales where individual survival became statistical improbability. Kaelan followed my gaze toward spaces that bent light around their presence. The absence was more noticeable than manifestation would have been. His scarred features hardened as he recognized the implications. Whatever happened on this plateau would be recorded by authorities whose judgments could eliminate pantheon politics through simple administrative decision. Gods were troublesome variables requiring removal from cosmic equations.
Let them watch.
He said. His voice carried defiance.
Some rebellions require witnesses to document that resistance occurred, that not all consciousness surrendered to hierarchies designed to eliminate alternatives. If we fall here, at least our failure will be recorded by powers who will understand exactly what they destroyed and why that destruction proved necessary.
Across the electrical barrier pulsing with barely contained fury, Theron raised his arms toward the storm-racked skies. Lightning answered his summons with eagerness, divine power channeling through flesh that had been remade specifically for containing tempest wrath. His scarred face twisted with anticipation.
Today the cosmic order trembles.
Theron's voice carried harmonics that made reality shiver. Each syllable was weighted with power that rewrote local physics.
Today we prove that even gods can choose their own destiny. That consciousness holds value beyond its utility in systems maintained through systematic harvesting.
The declaration hung in the storm-charged air like a challenge directed not at Kaelan's forces, but at the Seraph observers recording every development. This wasn't just a territorial dispute or personal vendetta. This was rebellion announcing itself to authorities whose attention could reshape existence through bureaucratic necessity.
You speak of choice while commanding elemental slaves.
Kaelan's response carried across the plateau with mountain-deep authority that somehow exceeded Theron's amplified fury through sheer conviction.
Your rebellion replaces one form of tyranny with another wearing a different mask. We fight for freedom that includes all consciousness, not just divine beings seeking independence from cosmic oversight.
Theron's laughter echoed across the obsidian peaks, divine amusement at naivety that believed perfect solutions existed for problems spanning geological timescales.
Idealism is a luxury afforded to those who haven't spent millennia navigating politics that reduce individuals to components in equations. I work with reality as it exists, not fantasies about how it should function.
The first barrier flickered with a warning that made my enhanced perception scream protest. Energy patterns shifted from stable containment to cascading failure. Dimensional mathematics approached the critical threshold where structures designed for permanence would collapse into catastrophic release. Then it failed. The lightning wall dissolved like sugar in rain. Its carefully maintained integrity was overwhelmed by forces that had been building pressure against barriers designed to withstand divine fury. Electrical discharge exploded outward in a wave that would have vaporized normal flesh. Superheated plasma expanded at velocities that violated atmospheric physics. Elemental fury poured across the obsidian stone like liquid lightning given hunger and purpose. The army moved without formation, without discipline. Only raw tempest wrath seeking targets for violence that had been contained too long by their creator's will. Thunder beings led the charge. Their massive bulk crushed volcanic glass beneath footfalls that registered as localized earthquakes. The pack met their charge with disciplined violence. Grimjaw's flanking position erupted into a coordinated assault that exploited the thermal vent's disruptive influence on electrical beings. Her pack members moved with synchronized precision. Claws found weak points and elemental manifestations that struggled to maintain coherence when grounded through superheated gases. Lightning sprites scattered before their coordinated strikes. Chaos met discipline and discovered a fundamental disadvantage. Ironback's position became the fulcrum around which the battle pivoted. Thunder beings crashed against his reinforced frame with force that should have pulverized bone. But centuries of genetic refinement had created a living bulwark capable of withstanding impacts that exceeded natural limitation. He channeled their momentum toward the flanks where mobility could exploit their lack of coordination. transforming raw force into tactical advantage through positioning that required inhuman calculation. Swiftclaw harassed exposed flanks with strikes that never committed fully. He withdrew before elementals could mount a coordinated response. His youth provided speed that compensated for experience. His movements flowed with liquid grace between cover points that maximized survival while maintaining pressure that prevented enemy formations from stabilizing. Above the physical battle, divine powers collided with force that sent shockwaves through multiple dimensions. Kaelan's berserker rage met Theron's storm mastery in violence that reshaped local reality. His double-bladed axes carved trajectories through air that screamed protest. Each stroke ended elemental existence with surgical efficiency. 4 centuries spent perfecting violence as an artistic expression. Lightning carved new patterns into volcanic glass. Divine blood, both crimson and something that glowed with otherworldly luminescence, stained the earth that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. The impact sent tremors through the obsidian foundations. Each collision released energies that would have registered as natural disasters on instruments designed to measure geological events. I stood at the plateau's center. My enhanced perception tracked developments that unfolded too quickly for normal consciousness to process. The apple's power continued flooding through my cellular structures. It granted awareness beyond mortal limitation, while simultaneously revealing exactly how outmatched we remained despite impossible advantages. The Seraph observers recorded everything. Their manifold eyes reflected cosmic judgment beyond mortal comprehension. Their presence pressed against my consciousness like a gathering avalanche. A promise of intervention that would make this battle seem like children playing at war when cosmic authorities decided complications required administrative resolution. A thunder being broke through Ironback's position. Its massive form bore down on my location with single-minded determination, targeting orders from an intelligence coordinating chaos into purposeful assault. The elemental's bulk blocked the starlight. It cast a shadow that felt like physical weight pressing against my enhanced biology. I raised my hands without conscious thought. The apple's knowledge flooded my consciousness with understanding I hadn't possessed moments before. Power flowed through pathways that had been carved by the forbidden fruit's transformation. Reality bent around my will. The thunder being exploded into component electricity, its manifestation unable to maintain coherence against forces that rewrote local physics. Electrical discharge scattered across the obsidian stone in patterns too regular to be random. Testament to consciousness that had briefly existed before dissolution returned it to raw energy awaiting reformation. The battle raged around me, pack against elementals, god against god. Mortal transformed by forbidden fruit against forces that sought to chain all existence to hierarchies older than stars themselves. But for now, we fought. And in the fighting, perhaps we discovered what made existence worth preserving, despite cosmic authorities who viewed individual consciousness as renewable resource. The storm had finally come, and we would meet it with everything we had. Knowing that witnesses recorded our defiance for review by powers whose judgment could reshape reality through bureaucratic necessity alone.
Chapter 24. The final battle begins.
The obsidian plateau erupted, not gradually, the way wars usually begin, with positioning and posturing, but with the sudden violence of a natural catastrophe. Grimjaw led her flank in a sweeping charge that met Theron's elemental tide like opposing storm fronts colliding. Her massive claws caught the first lightning sprite mid-leap, rending its crackling form into dissipating energy. The scent of ozone and fury scattered across volcanic stone. The pack fought like a single organism. Centuries of shared combat had distilled their coordination into something beyond human military precision. Their movements flowed like water, deadly and inevitable. Swiftclaw's lean frame blurred between positions as she brought down a thunder being twice her size. Her elongated jaws clamped onto its core until the creature's electrical essence hemorrhaged into the atmosphere. Nearby, Ironback anchored the center line with the stoic determination of a living mountain. His scarred hide deflected lightning bolts that would have shattered peaks. The apple of Eden pulsed against my sternum beneath layers of stolen armor. Its power coursed through my veins like liquid starlight. I could perceive threads of energy that bound the combatants together in complex patterns. Not separate battles, but facets of the same cosmic conflict. Each victory and defeat rippled through connections across physical space. Above us, gods collided with force that cracked dimensional barriers. Kaelan's berserker rage manifested as visible fire around his frame. Crimson and gold flames weren't heat, but pure divine wrath given form. His double-bladed axes carved through storm-charged air with movements too fast for mortal eyes. Each strike was calculated to inflict maximum damage while avoiding the lightning spears that sought his vitals. 4 centuries of combat experience distilled into surgical strikes that found weakness in armor designed to contain tempest energy. Theron matched him with storm mastery that turned the sky itself into a weapon. Lightning lashed out with directed fury, not random strikes but coordinated assaults. They herded Kaelan toward positions where accumulated electrical discharge could overwhelm even divine reflexes. The Stormbringer's silver eyes blazed with satisfaction as thunder shaped itself into blades and barriers, into walls of sound that could shatter bone and disrupt the very fabric of thought. Their battle played out in 3 dimensions simultaneously. Physical combat with weapons forged from divine will. Metaphysical energies clashed in frequencies that made reality itself scream. Where their powers met, the air tore. Not dramatically, but with quiet inevitability, like fabric reaching its tensile limit. The connection revealed itself through blood and lightning. Kaelan's right axe carved deep into Theron's shoulder. Divine steel bit through armor that had weathered assaults from forces beyond mortal comprehension. Stormblood sprayed in arcs that painted the sky with abstract violence. The Stormbringer's roar of pain carried harmonics that rattled volcanic stone. Across the battlefield, elemental warriors suddenly collapsed. Dozens of thunder beings crumbled to ash in the space of heartbeats. Their forms dissipated like morning mist exposed to harsh sun. Lightning sprites winked out of existence, leaving gaps in the chaotic horde. The pack exploited the weakened defenses with ruthless efficiency. Grimjaw's howl of triumph echoed across the plateau as her flanks surged forward. He's linked to them. When he bleeds, they bleed. When he weakens. But the link cut both ways. Theron's lightning spear found its mark in Kaelan's thigh. Divine electricity burned through muscle and sinew with malevolent precision. I watched in horror as 3 lycanthropes stumbled. The divine connection translated injury across the metaphysical bond that tied general to army. Swiftclaw's howl of pain split the air as electric burns appeared on her flanks without any elemental touching her. Phantom wounds materialized through the cosmic linkage. Around the plateau's perimeter, the Seraph Watchers pressed closer to reality's edge. Their manifold eyes tracked patterns of divine politics playing out through organized violence. They recorded every blow exchanged for review by powers whose attention could reshape existence. 6 wings beat against dimensional barriers with a rhythm that made the air taste like copper and prophecy. I pressed myself against volcanic stone that radiated heat through my stolen armor. I tried to stay beneath notice while my enhanced vision cataloged the battle's progression. The pack was winning through disciplined coordination. Their tactical superiority overwhelmed elemental fury that knew only chaos. Every gap in Theron's forces became an opportunity for devastating counterattack. Every momentary weakness was exploited with predatory efficiency. A thunder being charged Ironback with the mindless aggression of a natural disaster. The scarred veteran didn't dodge. He couldn't, not with his massive frame anchoring the defensive line. Instead, he took the impact head-on. His claws found purchase in the creature's core and ripped. Divine lightning erupted from the dying elemental's form, but Ironback's hide bore scars from worse encounters. He shook off the electrical discharge like irritating rain. In that same moment, I saw Theron flicker. The Stormbringer's features twisted with momentary weakness. His storm-racked form lost cohesion for a fraction of a second. Kaelan's left axe found the opening, carving new scars across armor that contained tempest energy through sheer force of divine will. The tide was turning. Elemental ranks thinned faster than Theron could summon replacements. Thunder beings found themselves outmaneuvered by predators who had learned to hunt in packs across multiple worlds. Lightning sprites dissipated like candle flames in hurricane winds. Their chaotic assault patterns were no match for centuries of evolved pack tactics. Above, Kaelan pressed his advantage with brutal efficiency. His axes moved in patterns that seemed random until you understood their underlying mathematics. Each strike flowed into the next, building momentum that carved away at Theron's defenses like water-eroding stone. Divine blood painted the sky in patterns that hurt to witness directly. Abstract violence rendered in colors that had no earthly names.
You cannot win in my realm.
Theron's voice carried harmonics that made volcanic glass ring like struck bells. His words were layered with frequencies that operated on consciousness itself.
I've broken armies in worse conditions.
Kaelan's response came between axe strokes. His tone carried the flat certainty of someone who'd conquered more worlds than most gods would witness in their entire existence.
Your storm means nothing when I can see every pattern before it forms.
Truth sight. His trickster heritage let him perceive the underlying structure of Theron's attacks. He predicted movements before they occurred. Combined with 4 centuries of combat experience, it transformed their duel into something closer to an execution than a battle. A lightning sprite materialized beside me with the crackle of sudden displacement. I rolled sideways on pure instinct. My hand closed around volcanic stone sharp enough to cut. The elemental lunged where I'd been moments before. Its crackling form hungered for the solid matter it needed to sustain coherence in physical reality. My makeshift weapon passed through its core with resistance like water. But water that screamed. The sprite dissipated into component energies, leaving behind only the ozone-sharp scent of ionized air. Across the plateau, a corresponding tremor passed through Theron's form as his army weakened by one more increment. They were all connected. Every elemental, every manifestation of storm and fury linked back to their source through metaphysical bonds that worked both directions. Damage to the Stormbringer weakened his forces, but destroying his forces one by one would eventually erode even his divine resilience. Victory seemed inevitable. The pack held the field with brutal efficiency. Their coordination turned the plateau into a killing ground, where elemental chaos met organized violence and lost. Grimjaw's flank had pushed through to the eastern edge, cutting off reinforcements from thermal vents that birthed new thunder beings. Ironback's center held firm as volcanic stone, absorbing attacks that would have shattered mountains. And Swiftclaw, despite her phantom wounds, led the western assault with the desperate fury of someone fighting to avenge injury inflicted through a cosmic link. Above, Kaelan dominated the sky. His berserker fury had reached a crescendo, manifesting as flames that wrote violence in the air between wing beats. Each successful blow carved away more of Theron's storm-wreathed armor. Each strike found purchase in flesh that had been hardened through consumption of countless refined consciousnesses. The Stormbringer's lightning dimmed with each passing moment. His power waned as his elemental army crumbled beneath lycanthrope coordination. Even the Seraph Watchers seemed to lean forward in their extra-dimensional perches. They recorded the moment when Rebellion's gambit would finally fail. When the god who dared cultivate alternatives to their control would be brought to heel through superior force and tactical brilliance refined across centuries of conquest. Then Theron's silver eyes found me across the battlefield. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in the space between heartbeats. Not from cold, but from recognition. The terrible calculation of someone who understood that victory in direct combat was slipping away, but who possessed other options for inflicting the damage necessary to shift the strategic balance. His scarred features twisted with something beyond simple malice. This was desperation turned to deadly purpose. The last gambit of a cornered predator who'd realized that his opponent's only weakness stood exposed on volcanic stone. Hidden beneath stolen armor but impossible to protect while fighting for survival 50 feet overhead.
Let's see how much sentiment truly costs.
Theron whispered. His voice carried across the plateau through stormwind that obeyed his will alone. Divine lightning began gathering around his frame with malevolent intent. Not the wild electrical discharge he'd been hurling at Kaelan, but concentrated fury that built with patient deliberation. The kind of strike that required focus and preparation. The kind that could only be used if you were willing to leave yourself vulnerable to immediate counterattack. The kind you used when the target was worth dying to hit. Understanding slammed into me with the force of physical impact. He's gonna...
Vera!
Kaelan's roar carried harmonics that cracked the air itself. His divine perception recognized the threat vectors faster than conscious thought could process. His massive form blurred with speed beyond physics. He abandoned his dominant position to dive toward where I stood frozen against volcanic stone. But Theron had calculated the distances perfectly, had measured the seconds between recognition and intervention, between threat and response. His silver eyes held cruel triumph as accumulated lightning coalesced into spear form. Divine electricity compressed into a weapon designed to punch through armor that could deflect lesser attacks. The world slowed. Not actually. My perception accelerated by the apple's power. I could witness what would happen in the fraction of a second before it occurred. Kaelan's trajectory would bring him between me and the lightning spear. His body would intercept the strike meant for my heart. The injury wouldn't kill him. Gods were harder to destroy than that. But it would wound him badly enough to shift the battle's momentum. Theron knew it. Counted on it. This wasn't about killing me. This was about forcing Kaelan to choose between victory and my survival. About proving that sentiment did cost. That caring about anything beyond conquest made you vulnerable to enemies who recognized emotional leverage as powerful as any weapon. The lightning spear began its descent. 20 feet above me, 15, 10. Kaelan was still 3 wing beats away. His amber eyes blazed with fury and something else. Something that looked like fear, distilled across 5 centuries of existence. The pack sensed their alpha's distress through bonds beyond normal communication. Their coordinated assault faltered as instinct warred with tactical discipline.
Choose, Worldbreaker, the mortal or the battle, sentiment or victory. Let's see which matters.
The lightning struck, but I was already moving. The apple's power had shown me trajectories, velocities, the precise mathematics of divine attack compressed into weapon form. My body reacted before conscious thought could freeze it with appropriate terror. I dove sideways, rolling across volcanic stone that tore through stolen armor and scraped skin raw. Not fast enough. Physics didn't care about determination or desperation. The lightning spear clipped my shoulder with force that translated electrical fury into kinetic impact. It spun me like a doll thrown by an angry child. Pain exploded through neural pathways not designed to process divine violence. White-hot agony made thought impossible. I hit volcanic stone hard enough to drive breath from my lungs. The world tilted sideways. My vision fragmented into pieces that refused to assemble into a coherent picture. Somewhere distant, Kaelan's roar shook the plateau's foundation. Closer, the pack's coordinated assault resumed with doubled fury. Grimjaw's howl promised vengeance measured in blood and broken bone. But through the pain and fragmenting consciousness, I'd seen something the others couldn't perceive. The apple's power had revealed it in that fraction second before impact. A pattern in Theron's energy. A fluctuation in the threads connecting him to his elemental army. He'd gambled everything on that single strike. Left himself vulnerable while gathering the power necessary to punch through my enhanced defenses. And in that moment of vulnerability, when his attention focused entirely on killing what Kaelan cared about, Kaelan's axes had found their mark, both blades, simultaneously, driven through storm-wreathed armor with berserker fury beyond mere violence, something closer to primal force rendered in divine flesh. Through blurring vision, I watched Theron's silver eyes widen with understanding that came too late. His lightning spear had struck true, or true enough to wound, to hurt, to prove his point about sentiment's cost. But the price of that accuracy had been his life. The Stormbringer's form began dissipating like morning mist. Divine essence bled out through wounds that had pierced his core. Not death. Gods were harder to kill than simple physical trauma. But defeat, absolute and undeniable. Banishment back to whatever realm birthed his consciousness, where he'd spend centuries recovering the strength necessary to manifest again in physical reality. His elemental army crumbled in a cascading wave of dissolution. Thunder beings collapsed to ash. Lightning sprites winked out of existence. The coordinated chaos that had threatened to overwhelm the pack through sheer numbers evaporated like a bad dream, exposed to waking light. Victory, complete, absolute. But as consciousness faded beneath shock and injury, as Kaelan's arms gathered me against armor still warm from berserker flames, I understood what Theron had really accomplished. He'd proven his point. Sentiment did cost. Caring made you vulnerable in ways that pure violence never could. The Worldbreaker had won his battle, but only by abandoning tactical advantage to protect something that shouldn't matter according to divine logic. The Seraph Watchers pressed closer still. Their manifold eyes recorded everything for review by powers whose judgment would determine whether botanical partnership could survive scrutiny that reduced individual consciousness to components in equations balanced through systematic processing.
Stay with me.
Kaelan's voice rumbled against my ear. His tone carried undertones I'd never heard before, not a command but a plea, desperate in ways beyond divine authority.
Vera, stay.
But darkness was rising like a tide I couldn't resist. It pulled consciousness down into depths where pain couldn't follow. My last coherent thought was wondering whether the apple's power would preserve me through injuries that should kill any mortal. Whether Theron's lightning had damaged something fundamental that even divine fruit couldn't repair. Whether sentiment's cost would finally prove too high for gods who'd learned to love what they were supposed to conquer. The plateau's volcanic stone was warm against my back. Above, stars I'd never learned the names of painted the sky in patterns that obeyed different astronomical principles. Somewhere distant, the pack howled their victory in harmony. Battles won and prices paid. And then there was only darkness and the fading warmth of arms that held me like I was something worth protecting. Even when protection meant abandoning victory's certainty for sentiment's desperate gamble, the final battle had begun. But its real cost, the price measured in connections formed despite cosmic hierarchies designed to prevent such complications, was only starting to come due.